Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Theresa May has said she will not intervene in the row over David Cameron's resignation honours list. The former Prime Minister faces being accused of misusing the system over claims he's looking to reward allies and party donors. An ex-Westminster sleaze watchdog has branded Mr Cameron's leaked honours nominations of nearly 50 names, including a former stylist to his wife, as totally inappropriate. Well, the move to include Tory donors and advisers at number 10 in the list has been defended by Sir Desmond Swayne, who was himself knighted in the New Year's honours list.
The reality is that those people who worked in number 10 for the Prime Minister over the last 6 years have worked under enormous pressure, 24/7, and I think it's perfectly proper that over that time the Prime Minister will want to have singularly rewarded those people with proper public recognition. He would have expected to have another 4 years to do that, but it's the nature of our politics that when the Prime Minister's out on his ear, so are all the people who provided those services for him and for the nation.
Well, those in line for the former Prime Minister's resignation honours include 4 pro-EU cabinet colleagues: Philip Hammond, Michael Fallon, Patrick McLaughlin and David Lidington, all reported to be in line for a knighthood. Mr Cameron also requested that former Chancellor and, of course, key political ally George Osborne is awarded with Companion of Honour. Will Straw, the head of the failed official Remain campaign, has been proposed for a CBE. More than 20 Downing Street staff have been proposed amongst those recommended for OBEs. Samantha Cameron's assistant, Isabel Spearman, she helped with her diary and with her outfits. And George Osborne's former aide, Tia Rogers, who famously overhauled the Chancellor's image, including putting him on a diet. Now, big Tory donors don't miss out either. There are knighthoods detailed for Ian Taylor and Andrew Cook, who, between them, reportedly gave, about £3 million to the party. Now, the Prime Minister has already said she won't intervene when it comes to those names being put forward. It is the outgoing Prime Minister's gift to be able to recommend for awards. But the list still needs official approval from civil servants in the Cabinet Office, so they've still got another hurdle to go through. Well, let's go live to Downing Street and our senior political correspondent, Beth Rigby. Beth, David Cameron must have known how controversial this was going to be when he put this list together, whenever the details were going to come out.
Yes, he would have known it was going to be controversial, and he clearly decided it was a price worth paying to try and reward what he sees as his loyal staff and allies who helped him through the coalition years and served him when he was Prime Minister until the referendum when he had to step down. So, yes, he knew it would be controversial, and yet he's pressed ahead. Now, as you said, there's been huge opposition to it today. Tom Watson, the Deputy Labour leader, calling it cronyism at its worst, calling on Theresa May to step in and get involved. And this is what Tom Watson said about it today.
I think the honours system does reward people for public service, and a lot of people in this country still value that. But of course the system is undermined if it's abused by people in power. I mean, I've got nothing against Mrs Cameron's stylist. I've never met her. I've only seen her photographs in the newspapers today. But I don't think she deserves an OBE. And I don't think the general public would think that as well. David Cameron chose to give her an OBE because he knows her. And you shouldn't give honours just to your friends group. You should give it to people who've served the country with honour and distinction and with unprecedented levels of public service.
So there you have Tom Watson laying into the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, I should say, over this honours list. But I should also point out that this is a precedent that PMs do this. Gordon Brown had a dissolution honours list, so not specifically a resignation list, but he put a number of names forward of some of his key allies. Tony Blair didn't do it, but he was embroiled in the cash for honours scandal, so obviously felt he couldn't. John Major has done it, and countless prime ministers before. Tom Watson there saying that Theresa May should get involved and block this list. The current Prime Minister making it very clear that she's not going to get involved in this row. Her people said to us earlier today, a spokesperson for the Prime Minister, that it's standard for an outgoing Prime Minister to submit a resignation list. The names on the list were at the former Prime Minister's discretion and will go through the proper process. And then, crucially, it would set a very bad precedent for a new Prime Minister to interfere in the official processes. So this list is in the Cabinet Office. It's going around independent committees who are scrutinising those names, but it looks like this list will go through. It might be slightly whittled down depending on what happens between now and when it's published. Theresa May won't get involved. Where does it leave David Cameron? Well, sure, his friends and allies will get these gongs and these awards, but it leaves a bad taste in the mouth of the public, and it could really tarnish his premiership and his legacy.
OK, Beth, for now, thank you. Let's go to Westminster and political editor at The Spectator, James Forsyth. Afternoon to you, James.
Afternoon.
Is this a bigger row as we're making it out to be, do you think?
Well, I think Theresa May is right, but whatever you think of David Cameron's list, it wouldn't be appropriate for the next Prime Minister to start to try and prune back or veto suggestions on the previous Prime Minister's resignation honours list. In this case, it's a Tory succeeding a Tory, but normally it'll be a Tory Prime Minister succeeding a Labour Prime Minister or vice versa. And you wouldn't want them to go around saying, right, all the honours proposed by my predecessor are going out the window.
No, and a lot of people could understand that perspective, as you say, particularly when it's a change of party at the top. So therefore, it begs the question, should this whole system be in place at all, the resignation honours list, where the Prime Minister can propose just about whoever he likes, including his wife's stylist?
Well, these names have to go through the appropriate kind of honours committee to check that they're appropriate people to receive them. Look, I think we can debate whether the convention is a sensible one or not. I think there is an argument against kind of the whole system of political honours being out of date in the 21st century. But I think that once the list has been submitted by the Prime Minister, it has to, I think, be respected at that point.
Why? Why do you think it has to be respected?
Because I think it would make politics even more bitter and even more factional if you had people going back saying, right, my predecessor wanted to give an honour to someone who'd worked for him for 20 years, I'm going to stop that. Now, I think we can debate whether the Prime Minister should have that power of patronage, but seeing as they do, I think when they use it, you can't kind of go around saying changing the rules after the fact.
Well, yeah, we see with all of this, when we get the calls of cronyism, and we had that again from Tom Watson just an hour ago, it's understandable, isn't it, when you, particularly perhaps when you see donors being rewarded. So it would seem, if this list is to be believed, the idea that if you give enough money, you can walk away with a very nice honour, including a knighthood. That does mean, doesn't it, that the whole system does need some root and branch reform.
Look, I mean, we have a fundamental problem with the way in which we fund political parties in this country. We don't have... Gone are the days when political parties got most of their money through members signing up and paying a subscription fee. You've now got parties courting big-name donors to give large amounts of money and then trying to find some way to persuade people to donate. And how that interacts with the honour system has obviously caused huge controversy in the past.
Are you surprised that David Cameron has done this? A man who said he wanted to, bring in a new style of politics, as they all do, to be fair, when they get into number 10. Is it a case that when you're walking out of number 10 for the last time, actually you really don't care what people think of you when it comes to this sort of issue?
I think there's definitely a bit of the latter, but I think we had a kind of preview of this resignation honours list after the last election, when Cameron gave Vincent Crosby a knighthood. He gave various people who had worked in number 10 or for George Osborne honours because they were leaving to go and do something else. I think his view essentially is these people work for me, they worked hard, I'm the Prime Minister and I can give them an honour, so I'm going to do so. I think the question is whether the Prime Minister should have that power.
At the end of the day, there is the whole idea of public approval of all of this, and the fact it leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Most people watching this want to see the lollipop lady, getting, some sort, even if it's just that, you know, the British Empire Medal or what have you. It's that sort of recognition that people actually respect in this, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I thought one of the endearing things about this list was the fact that people who've been David Cameron's government drivers, for example, were getting honours. I mean, there are people who do jobs for not very much money that are hard work, who, you know, the honour system should be rewarding their public service. I think it is another question about whether people who do these jobs and will carry on in politics or will go off to do something else quite profitably, whether they're the appropriate people to receive these honours.
James Forsyth, good to get your perspective on that this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed.
Theresa May has said she will not intervene in the row over David Cameron's resignation honours list. The former Prime Minister faces being accused of misusing the system over claims he's looking to reward allies and party donors. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn condemned the nominations of politicians, saying to be elected to office is honour enough.
David Cameron seems to have found a lot of mates that he wanted to reward, and that's upset everybody. I'm sure he's got a lot of mates that need rewarding. I want to see an honours system that's fair, that's open, is more democratic, and people can nominate to it. I do not believe in honours for politicians who are in office, because I think to be in office, to be elected to Parliament, to a council, anywhere else, is honour itself.
We've seen this argument time and again, last with John Major. Famously, though, the two previous Labour PMs have not honoured people when they've left.
Hi, Kay. They haven't, in that they haven't given specific resignation lists, but Gordon Brown did do a dissolution honours list when he left government in 2010 and gave a string of peerages and honours to some of his allies and senior Labour politicians. But you're right that the sort of trend to give lots of your allies and aides big gongs and honours hasn't been a particular trend this century, although it was done quite prominently under John Major and also under Margaret Thatcher.
Talk to us, if you would, please, about what might happen. We've heard from Theresa May, and she has said that she's not going to intervene. Is that the end of the matter?
Well, it is, Kay, in the sense that the former Prime Minister gets to pick who he would like to put forward for gongs, for peerages and knighthoods and OBEs and CBEs. And then it's left to the current Prime Minister, Theresa May, to take that list to the Queen and recommend those people for honours. Now, there were calls today that she shouldn't do this, that this was the wrong sort of politics. This was cronyism, and this was insider politics and the kind of politics that people don't like, and that she should block this list. Well, Theresa May has quite enough on her plate, Kay, organising Brexit, setting up the economic agenda of her new premiership, and she really doesn't want to get involved in this row. A spokesperson for her told me earlier today that it would set a very bad precedent for a new Prime Minister to interfere in official processes. Also, she might well want to use this patronage herself at some later date and doesn't want to get involved. In that sense, the names will go to official committees, they will get vetted, they will get put back to number 10. Theresa May will put those to the Queen, and this list should go through. So David Cameron will get his way, and he will be able to reward those allies. But where does he lose out, Kay? Well, you could argue that it will cast a shadow over his premiership, and it will tarnish his reputation as he leaves number 10.
Let's speak to commentator for the Mail on Sunday, Dan Hodges, and former special advisor for Tony Blair, Lance Price. Hello to you, gentlemen. Thank you both for joining us here on Sky News. Dan, let's turn to you first of all. You would say what's wrong with showing a bit of appreciation?
Yes, I would. I think it's perfectly right that people involved in public service are sort of recognised within the honours system. I also think it's important that people who have a political role within that are also recognised, because obviously in a democracy the political element is an important element. And as you pointed out, I mean, the reality is I think part of the problem is, I think because we haven't sort of technically had a resignation honours since 1997, I think people aren't quite aware of what these are. These are specifically honours that are designed to enable the Prime Minister, the outgoing Prime Minister of the day, to specifically honour people who have served them, which is why we've seen the nature of the list: aides, assistants to the Prime Minister. So as far as I'm concerned, it's all perfectly above board.
Lance?
No, I would abolish resignation honours altogether. I don't think they do any service to the honours system, and they devalue the honours that are given to ordinary folk up and down the country who really do something outside of what is expected of them in their normal day-to-day work. And also politically, I think they almost always damage the giver. So if you go back all the way back to, I don't know, Harold Wilson, who had a very controversial resignation honours list, and those subsequently, they've often done more damage to the giver. And you know, who wants to receive an honour under those circumstances? Do we really need to give honours to chauffeurs and to hairstylists and to people who simply did a bit of work for the Prime Minister in some capacity? I think better that we did without them altogether.
Dan?
Well, I think we should honour those people. I mean, I think the fact that you're a driver, or you run the Downing Street switchboard, or you're an advisor to the Prime Minister who's given a significant amount of your life and your work in very trying circumstances. I think the idea that these people should be specifically excluded from the system is frankly ridiculous. I think Lance's absolutely right. It's obviously right that what we would, in a slightly patronising way, call ordinary people are recognised as part of the honours system, but people like that are rightly recognised as part of the honours system every year in their thousands. And the idea that by entering into public service you should in some way exclude yourself from being honoured in any way for the service you provide to your country, I think that would be a bizarre situation.
Lance?
Well, I think if we were giving honours to chauffeurs who work particularly hard for other people around the country, or to switchboard operators, or to people who come in and do office work, that would be one thing. But why should working for the Prime Minister suddenly give you a shortcut to an honour that isn't open to other people in the country? And I just think it damages the whole idea of public service, because it gives the impression, once again, that people at the top in politics are looking after their own, scratching their mates' backs, looking after those who've done work for them. And when we're trying to re-establish some sort of trust and confidence in the way in which the political system operates, and we know that that's been very, very badly damaged and tarnished in recent years, I think the message that this sort of thing sends out just simply isn't worth the candle. For people who, frankly, should be proud that they did work for a British Prime Minister. That should be enough for them. They should go away with a good feeling in their bones about what they contributed while David Cameron was Prime Minister, and good luck to them for that. But they don't need letters after their name or a handle before it in order to give them any kind of recognition.
OK, Dan, let's take it on to party donors, should we, and about rewarding party donors. That's surely just buying a gong, and look at the sort of trouble Tony Blair got himself in over that.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, and I would set that aside. I mean, I think that's what we need to do in relation to this sort of particular uproar. I mean, as I say, I do think those who have provided public service should be rewarded. I think once you get into the situation of people effectively paying and then being rewarded with honours, as you rightly say, as we saw with Tony Blair, that gets you into serious difficulties. I mean, would also say, I mean, I don't see how David Cameron can justify the awards that are reportedly being given to those who financed and worked on the Remain campaign in the referendum. I mean, that was a political campaign. If it had been balanced by those who had worked on the Leave campaign as well, I mean, I think then it could perhaps have been justified. So I think in those two areas, I think the criticism is justified. But I think, as I say, that's separate from those who have worked for David Cameron, for George Osborne, for an extended period, and as I said, have worked directly in public service.
What do you think on that one, Lance, when we're talking about party donors?
No, I certainly think that awards, and it's normally seats in the House of Lords for people who have given large sums of money to political parties, is something that's very, very distasteful. You shouldn't be able to buy a place in Parliament. And members of the House of Lords are parliamentarians. They get to vote on the laws of the land. And there shouldn't be any shortcut to that sort of position as a result of having given money to a political party. I think Tony Blair was wrong to abuse the system in that way. He certainly wasn't the first and as we've seen, not the last Prime Minister to do so. But I don't know why we have this obsession with it in this country, or indeed why politicians in particular, four members of the cabinet, of the outgoing cabinet, to receive knighthoods, an Order of Merit, apparently, for George Osborne, who's just been sacked by the sitting Prime Minister. I think all of this just sends out a message to people at home that it's business as usual at Westminster, and business as usual is not something they find attractive or compelling.
Lance, a couple of people tweeting me this afternoon saying, are you just bitter because you didn't get one under Tony Blair?
Yeah, I'm very upset. That's the only reason I take this position, is that I didn't get an OBE as a result of working for Tony Blair. No, it's nothing to do with that.
Surely a CBE at the least, I would have thought, Lance.
Well, exactly, Kate. I mean, you and me in the House of Lords at the end of the decade.
We'd sort them out between us, wouldn't we? Absolutely. Dan, why do you think Theresa May has decided not to get involved?
Well, because I think she's got a lot on her plate at the moment, sort of running the country. But of course, I presume, at some point, Theresa may well be thinking about preparing her own resignation honours list, and may well to rightly reward some of those who have worked loyally by her side for a number of years as well. But I mean, I think the main reason is Theresa May can see a bit of a political storm, and she doesn't want to get sucked into the middle of it, quite understandably.
Does it divide down party lines, Lance, given that we were saying that the last resignation honours were 1997, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown didn't do it, although perhaps there are reasons why Tony Blair didn't get involved in providing honours at the end of his reign.
Yes, I'd like to say that the Labour Party had sort of clean hands on this, but actually Harold Wilson, who was a Labour Prime Minister back in the 60s and 70s, was probably one of the worst offenders. And I think people criticise Tony Blair for all sorts of things. At least he had the good sense to realise that if he had tried to help some of his mates when he resigned, that would have tarnished his reputation even more than it has been tarnished already. It's not really a party political thing at all. There are donors to the Liberal Democrats who are in the House of Lords as a result of money that they've given to the Liberal Democrats. There is for all parties. The worst offender of all time was David Lloyd George, of course, who was the last Liberal Prime Minister.
Final thought from you, Dan? I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen as far as Shami Chakrabarti is concerned yet, is it? So Jeremy Corbyn perhaps has to tread a little bit more carefully.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about party lines. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn was calling... I just saw Jeremy Corbyn for transparency on this sort of stuff. I mean, he still hasn't explained why it was he offered Shami Chakrabarti a peerage immediately after she'd agreed, it seems, to chair an independent inquiry on his behalf. So, absolutely, it's certainly not dividing along party lines.
A final thought from you as well, Lance. If there was one person that you think does deserve an honour out of the list that we've seen from Mr Cameron, would you be able to pick one?
I'm sure there are some very worthy people in there. I think most people at home are just sorry that Larry the cat didn't get anything.
Funny you should mention that. A lot of people saying that on Twitter as well. It's good to talk to both of you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. Steve, yeah, time to get rid of the whole honours system, methinks. Total scam and pointless. If anyone does deserve one, Larry the cat. Agreeing there with Lance. Thank you, gentlemen. Lots of you continuing to send in your thoughts on what you think about the honours system, whether it is reward for those that have worked hard or whether it's cronyism in its worst form. Jack Mendel, hello to you, Jack. Very good afternoon. Having an honours system which cites the empire, outdated is what Jack has to say. Craig Betts, not Craig Oliver, Craig Betts, hello to you, Craig. Totally inappropriate, says Craig. Cameron has demonstrated outright nepotism by rewarding MPs who did a service to him and not the country. And Paul Fleming, hello to you, Paul, saying too easily abused and very anachronistic. 21st century Britain could do lots better. Keep your thoughts coming in. Meantime, a Labour MP says male refugees settling in Britain need to be formally taught how to treat women to prevent cases of assault and sexual harassment. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be debating that actually with, amongst others, Suzanne Evans from UKIP. That's coming up very shortly indeed. I bet you've got a thought on that, haven't you?